France 24's Luke Schrago joins us now from the British Embassy in the centre of Paris. Luke, what has been the reaction from people there at the embassy?
We've seen this outpouring of grief and tributes pouring in. France really no different. The connection between the United Kingdom and France going back an awfully long time, leading to this deep connection between the two countries. And we've seen just here outside the British Embassy, which has become something of a focal point for people to pay homage, to come and lay wreaths of flowers, bouquets, and express their admiration for Queen Elizabeth. Crowds, increasing numbers coming throughout the morning. An awful lot of people currently waiting around me. Now, all of them that we've spoken to have, as I've said, been universal in their admiration for the United Kingdom's longest reigning monarch. Why don't we take a little listen to what some of they have to say?
I was sad last night. She's someone who for centuries has worked for values which stretch further than just those of everyone in the UK.
There are no longer any figures who have made history in our society. It's also Britain. I'm over 50 now, but when I was a kid, the UK was paradise and not the US. It was all about British society, freedom, British music, etc. So royalty is actually a good thing.
Well, on top of that kind of admiration, we've seen people giving up their memories of her, and also reactions coming from the official side of France. Emmanuel Macron, over in the neighbouring Élysée Palace, just a few steps away, he expressed his condolences. He'll be shortly to pay a visit here to the embassy, where he'll be speaking with the ambassador and sign a book of condolence. We can also expect a statement from the embassy shortly.
Luke Schrago reporting there from the British Embassy in the centre of Paris. Thank you, Luke. And let's now head to Berlin to talk to Nick. Nick, just take us through what the reaction has been from both the media and also Germany's leaders.
Well, Germany's leader, Chancellor Olaf Scholz, has said that Germany mourns the passing of the Queen. She did great work in reconciling the two countries at a time when Germany really needed a friend, and that her sense of humor would be missed as well. And President Frank-Walter Steinmeier saying similar things, underlying the need for the two countries to get along together after the Second World War. I'll tell you about the popular reaction in terms of how the press is reacting. Front page everywhere, of course. The Queen from the Süddeutsche Zeitung, which is a left-wing newspaper, not particularly monarchist. They quote Shakespeare in the editorial, saying that even the greatest ruler need not fear death, because what matters is what they've done in life, and predicting that her reign will be seen as a second Elizabethan age. And then the Tagesspiegel, which is a newspaper here in Germany, having an editorial entitled Elizabeth the Strong, and underlining, as we just heard it in an earlier report, that the empire faded away as other European empires did, but it did so with dignity thanks to her through its transformation into Commonwealth, and that she was popular across social classes. And I think the newspaper that was the most committed to her really is this Berliner Zeitung. There's 10 pages devoted to her life, even the back page, if you happen to miss the front page, underlining her 5 visits to Germany, particularly the first one in 1965, where she was received by 1 million people here in Berlin in a sort of Kennedy-esque kind of Ich bin ein Berliner moment. And the editorial say, I can only write this with tears in my eyes. The world has lost somebody, and the world will be poor without her.
Nick, what exactly was Olaf Scholz referring to when he spoke of the Queen's role in reconciling both the UK and Germany?
Well, it's really that, I think, that first trip I was just referring to, 1965, there hadn't been a visit by a German, a British head of state for 50 years, because there have been 2 world wars. What she did was she had an 11-day trip through the country. She came here, a crowd of 1 million at the same place where Kennedy gave his speech. The people were chanting, Elizabeth, Elizabeth, Elizabeth. And she said, and I would like to thank you all for the kindness you have shown to my troops who are here working with you to defend peace and democracy. And so it was really important for West Germany at the time to be able to sort of polish its image internationally, to have Britain, a British monarch, reach out a welcoming hand to bring them up onto the world stage as a respectable player after the Nazi era where they were looking for friends. And she was especially good as a messenger because the Windsor family, of course, was the Saxe-Coburg-Gotha family until 1917, basically German. When she was here, she visited Charlottenburg Castle, looked at some paintings and said, oh, this person became George I. The Germans knew that. The Germans knew she was very German to a certain extent. So even though she's supposed to be apolitical, her personal side made her message to a certain extent quite political. At least was very well received and very welcomed by the Germans at a time when they needed a friend on the international stage.
Nick Spicer reporting there from Berlin. Thank you. Now, Australians have also expressed their tributes in the news that Queen Elizabeth has died. Of course, Australia is one of the 15 nations that she ruled over. Adam Hancock has more from Sydney.
Well, she's remembered very fondly in this country, and I think that's reflected by the fact that it's a very sad and sombre atmosphere here in Sydney today. A lot of Australians went to bed last night, first hearing about possible bad health for the Queen, and then they woke up to the very sad news that she had died this morning. The Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, he's been leading the tribute to the Queen, really. He made a televised statement talking about the relationship between Australians and the Queen. I mean, she came to visit this country 16 times during her reign, and in that time she always spoke very fondly about Australia. Many Australians got the chance to catch a glimpse of her. I think when she first came here in 1954 on one of her first visits to Australia, she actually got around 75% of the population actually got to catch a glimpse of the Queen. So she really has travelled a lot of this country. Lots of events today to mark her passing. There will be a gun salute a little bit later on. We understand that Sydney Opera House will also be lit up to help remember the Queen as well. And the Australian Parliament has now been suspended for 2 weeks, 14 days as a mark of respect. And we're expecting a lot more events in the coming days as well, really, as everyone, like many places around the world, start to process the death of the Queen.
Since the 1960s, the British government and the media have had a plan ready for the Queen's eventual death. It's known as Operation London Bridge. However, her passing at the Scottish estate Balmoral brings